After Friday's unprecedented disrespect to our ally, or I should say, perhaps former ally, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, we as a country find ourselves in a position we are facing down the barrel of the consequences of the catastrophe that transpired. And it's a catastrophe that can be laid entirely at the feet of Donald Trump and JD Vance. These can and likely will have a massive impact not only on Ukraine, but on the entire world order. The Oval Office meeting between Donald and Zelensky, with an assist, shall we say, from JD Vance, devolved into a completely unnecessary, gratuitous, and humiliating public clash. No, wait, when I say humiliating, it was us who were humiliated. And afterwards, members of Donald's cabal forced Zelensky to leave. The press conference that had been scheduled was abruptly canceled because Donald is a thin skinned coward who can brook no opposition. The U.S. Ukraine security and minerals deal remains unsigned and in limbo, which is dangerous. Now, officials in the Trump regime are discussing freezing or ending U.S. military support to Ukraine. Late on Friday, a White House official stated that final shipments of ammunition and equipment already authorized and paid for by Congress could be canceled immediately, which is unconstitutional. And we'll have to see if Republicans in Congress are okay with once again abdicating all of their constitutional responsibilities to the American people. According to the Pentagon, about $3.85 billion remains of what Congress authorized for additional withdrawals from the Defense Department's stockpile. I just want to make it very clear. The vast majority of aid spent on Ukrainians' efforts in the war is spent in the United States and benefits American workers. They don't care. White House officials are also claiming that Zelensky must be the one to fix the situation, which essentially means that for them, Ukraine has to accept the outrageous and destructive demands of the Trump regime or risk losing U.S. backing and therefore, very likely, the war. With this potential move to end all military assistance to Ukraine, it's more important than ever for people in the government who understand how insane all of this is to stand up and fight. Right? And our former NATO and European allies must do the same. Okay. Well, hopefully, I mean, we have no control over what NATO or Europe will do, but they must be getting the message by now. Anybody who can have seen what happened on Friday and not understand the gravity of this situation and the gravity of Putin's hold over Donald and the Republican Fascist Party's allegiance to Russia and its mission was either not paying attention or is in some kind of vegetative state. Fortunately, some Americans are paying attention.
Ski Russia because JD Vance has no friends in Vermont, but he's got lots of them in Russia, so he should go there for vacation.
Sure you get this song. Thank you. Keep recording.
Well, just my opinion, but I think JD Vance should move there permanently. President Zelensky, of course, because he is a brave man who has weathered the most extreme and trying situations imaginable, is holding strong. Play the clip.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect President and I respect American people. And if, I don't know, if I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things that where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I think that is the most important thing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the people in charge of this benighted country have no interest in understanding Ukraine's position or what Ukraine has been going through or how we even got here. Thankfully, our soon-to-be former allies are rallying behind Ukraine more than ever. Watch.
Tonight, European leaders, alongside Ukrainian President Zelensky, gathering in London for a high-stakes emergency summit on Ukraine.
Can you patch things up with Donald Trump?
The US notably absent, following Zelensky's fiery Oval Office meeting with President Trump and Vice President Vance Friday. The UK and France front and centre, agreeing to negotiate a peace proposal that would include the deployment of troops and planes to Ukraine to police a potential ceasefire. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer saying the US needs to somehow back the plan to prevent Russia from re-attacking Ukraine.
Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing.
It was all smiles and handshakes when Zelensky met with King Charles.
I asked the head of NATO today whether the US will commit to future security guarantees for Ukraine. He said that key conversation is still ongoing.
Well, the answer is no. And I get it. I understand that Starmer and Macron, etc., have to play the game, but I sincerely hope they understand what's really going on here. Donald is not going to listen to anybody who, in his mind, has defied him, or anybody who refuses to appease him, or stroke his pathetic ego, or give in to his outrageous demands. He certainly won't make a move that goes against Russia's best interests, nor will he contradict the desires of his handler and leash holder, Vladimir Putin. The only chance we have on the domestic front is if Republicans in Congress, don't laugh, but it's true, come to their senses, or if enough of them, we only need 4 in the Senate, enough of them are willing to join with Democrats, all of whom do understand what's at stake and are willing to do the right thing, but they don't have any power. Most of the Republicans, however, are fascists. Too many care about nothing other than their own petty power, and a few who might otherwise act to protect Ukraine and the self-interest and future of the Western liberal democratic order are cowards. And in order to protect themselves, they would rather side with the fascists than stand with our democracy, which in my view makes them fascists. They do not get a pass. All right, before we dive into more, please take a second to like and share this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. And afterwards, hit the bell icon, and that way you will be alerted every time a new video drops. To see whether there is any possibility at all that the so-called leaders of the Republican Party will stand up and do the right thing, whether they will undertake the effort to make sure that they make their support of Ukraine and their contempt for Donald's handling of this fiasco, you know what, forget about contempt, they're pathetic, their disagreements with, their discomfort with Donald's handling of this fiasco, known in a way that may have a massive and decisive impact not only on their own constituents but on the country as a whole. You know, we need to hear from them. While it's true that some are speaking out, most remain silent or are loudly backing Donald's betrayal of our former ally. See, I'm saying former ally now. Like, why qualify it? We are not acting like an ally. We do not deserve to be called one. So let's see where some of these Republicans stand. Senator Lisa Murkowski, Republican from Alaska, broke with her party, calling Donald's public humiliation of Zelensky a betrayal of U.S. allies and an alarming shift toward aligning with Putin. Senator Murkowski tweeted the following, quote, "I am sick to my stomach as the administration appears to be walking away from our allies and embracing Putin, a threat to democracy and U.S. values around the world," unquote. The Alaska senator's statement was a rare note of dissent from a Republican, and, you know, good for her. But we need to see how she will act when a vote on something regarding the future of the United States support of Ukraine is required. Will she walk her walk? I do not know. A handful of Republicans, including Senator John Curtis of Utah and Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska, called the Oval Office clash, quote, "a bad day for American foreign policy," but avoided directly criticizing Donald, signaling the party's continued alignment with his worldview or, their fear of publicly stating their complete disagreement with what Donald and Vance did on Friday. What these guys said is both mealy-mouthed and ineffective. Senator James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma, did a slightly better job and pushed back against calls for Zelensky to resign, stating that Putin cannot be trusted and that forcing a leadership change would spiral Ukraine into chaos, because that's exactly what would happen. And that would be the first domino to fall. If I were Poland, I would be terrified right now. Lankford, however, did defend Donald's push for negotiations, which completely undermined any good he might have done. Take a look.
No, we're not turning our back on Ukraine, nor should we. Putin is a murderous KGB thug that murders his political enemies and is a dictator there. And so we've seen that. We've seen his aggression. Countries around him have seen that. Obviously, the Ukrainian people have seen that.
Everybody's saying security guarantees to secure the peace. You first have to have a peace.
All President Zelensky had to do was come in and sign this economic agreement and, again, show no daylight between Ukrainian people and the American people, and he chose to blow that up.
Oh, really? Really? Is that what was supposed to have happened? Really? No. That is not what was supposed to happen. Zelensky did exactly what he needed to do. He stood up to a man who is essentially blackmailing him and threatening to steal Ukraine's natural resources, which would weaken it and impoverish it, without any guarantee at all that the United States of America would be there to protect Ukraine in the future. That's insanity. And for anybody to suggest otherwise, well, we see you. Then, of course, at the opposite end of the spectrum, where most fascist Republicans now dwell, we have ass-kissers and sycophants like Lindsey Graham. Take a look.
Complete, utter disaster. Am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. Can Zelensky do a deal with the United States? After what I saw, I don't know. He was terrible at Munich, Zelensky, and I think he has made it almost impossible to sell to the American people that he's a good investment, that he is a good business partner.
Last question. Senator, hey, one at a time. Senator, do you one at a time. Christian Daytime.
Thank you. Do you think President Zelensky needs to resign to resume these peace talks?
He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have no soul. I wonder how many shots he had to do before he said those grotesque words. Seriously. And by the way, you fucking traitor, this is not a business transaction. This is a war in which a sovereign democratic nation is fighting for its fucking life and now is facing the very real possibility that it is going to have to do so without its most powerful former ally. Graham, of course, dismisses Ukraine's fight for democracy either because he understands nothing, I don't think that's it, or because for some other reason, which hopefully we'll find out someday, and he will suffer the humiliations and degradations he so richly deserves. House Speaker Mike Johnson, who's never read the Bible, reinforced Lindsey Graham's call for Zelensky to step down, suggesting he must either come to his senses or be replaced by in order to move peace talks forward. Play the clip.
House Speaker Mike Johnson saying Zelensky must change or resign.
Well, something has to change. Either he needs to come to his senses and come back to the table in gratitude, or someone else needs to lead the country to do that.
In gratitude? Wow, you are such a fake Christian. It's grotesque and embarrassing. I'm not a Christian, and I'm embarrassed by you and your faux religion. No, that is not what needs to happen. And what exactly is Zelensky in gratitude? He has expressed gratitude numerous times over the years when the United States was actually helping his country. All Donald Trump has done, because he's a thug and a bully who is beholden to Ukraine's enemies, is threaten him. And now he's going to withhold aid. So I'm not feeling particularly grateful, and I'm not Ukrainian. In response to these despicable and ignorant statements, on February 25th, 2025, Ukraine's parliament, the Verkhovna Rada, passed a resolution affirming President Zelensky's legitimacy, which is a thing that should not have needed to happen, and extending his mandate until the conclusion of martial law. The resolution underscores just how vital Zelensky's leadership has been over this 3 years long conflict. The parliament also made it clear that elections will be scheduled only after a, quote, comprehensive, just, and lasting peace is achieved.
Lindsey Graham is Lindsey Graham is a very good guy, a very nice. And speaking who must be the president and whether I shall resign, I can give him the citizenship of Ukraine. He will become the citizen of our country, and then his voice will start to gain weight, and I will hear him as a citizen of Ukraine on the topic of who must be the president. But Lindsey represents the party that fights for democratic values, and anyway, the president of Ukraine will have to be chosen not at home, at Lindsey Graham's home, but in Ukraine.
Yeah, well, first of all, can I please get Ukrainian citizenship? I would really appreciate that. And secondly, I understand why this needs to happen, why Zelensky feels the need to say the things he says, but it's mortifying. It's mortifying that he has to appease and coddle these traitors, who are traitors not just to Ukraine, but also to the United States of America. On March 2nd, 2025, the Ukrainian president responded, as we just heard, to that suggestion. And, what we heard also is that it's absurd. Like, in what universe does somebody outside of a country get to make those sorts of decisions on behalf of the citizens of that country? It's literally as if Vladimir Putin were telling the president of the United States what to do. No, it's not like that at all, because our president has absolutely no backbone, no courage, and no sense of basic human decency, which is why we're here. Anyway, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered U.S. Cyber Command to pause all offensive cyber operations against Russia on February 28th, 2025. This raises concerns, not surprisingly, about America's digital defenses and its ability to counter Russian cyber threats. Democrats have responded with obvious criticism. Let's watch.
Democrats are being very critical of the Trump administration for this. Chuck Schumer saying that this is really a gift to Russia, and that President Trump is in some ways so eager to try to please Russia that he's now trying to push back and halt cybersecurity operations and offensives against Russia. We also know that Russia has been seen as a sort of global security threat by a number of other nations as well.
Okay, this very alarming pause comes as Donald actively softens U.S. policy towards Moscow, including siding with Russia at the UN, echoing crumbling justifications for the war in Ukraine, which are all lies and propaganda and disinformation, and planning a meeting with Putin. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's interview on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos aired on Sunday, March 2nd, and hang on to your hat.
Well, the security guarantees, which I actually like to call deterrence, is all contingent upon there being a peace. Everybody's saying security guarantees to secure the peace. You first have to have a peace. We don't even know if the peace is possible. And this was understood by the Ukrainians. It was explained to them repeatedly. And that is, here's our strategy. We're trying to get Putin to a negotiating table. Let's not rehash. Everyone knows the history here, the back and forth. We understand that. We all understand that. But the question now is, can we get them to a table to negotiate? That's our goal. Don't do anything to disrupt that. And that's what Zelensky did, unfortunately, is he found every opportunity to try to Ukraine-splain on every issue. Then he confronts the vice president. When the vice president says the goal here is diplomacy, he immediately jumps in and challenges the vice president. Well, what kind of diplomacy? So we all understand, okay, that Putin is not going to be an easy negotiator in this regard. We all get that. But we have to start the process to see if something is even possible.
What are you even talking about? That is okay. Yeah. How dare the leader of Ukraine explain what's going on in his war-torn and ravaged country? Oh my word. And how dare you suggest that the United States of America, led by Donald Trump and JD Vance, has any interest whatsoever in what's best for Ukraine? It is absurd on its face, and it is deeply insulting. In an interview with CNN's Dana Bash, Senator Chris Murphy, Democrat of Connecticut, discusses why he regrets voting to confirm Marco Rubio as President's Secretary of State. By the way, every single Democrat present at that vote voted for that spineless piece of garbage. Watch this.
It was a mistake. I think a lot of us thought that Marco Rubio was going to stand up to Donald Trump on an issue like this, that when Donald Trump decided to align America with dictatorships, again, in order to make it easier for him to steal from the American people, to turn America into an illiberal democracy in which, just like Russia, the oligarchs, the economically powerful people in America rule and the rest of us just feed the powerful. I thought when Donald Trump decided to do that, when Donald Trump would come to him and say, help me move America closer to Russia and to Russian values, Marco Rubio would stand up to him. Marco Rubio has not, and that's been a great disappointment to many of his former colleagues in the Senate.
What on earth in Marco Rubio's biography for the last 8 years has made it you think that that's what would happen? You know what, Senator Murphy? Maybe you should have picked up the phone and called me or anybody else paying attention who is not a member of the very special Senate club, because we could have set you straight. This was inevitable. Rubio went on national television this weekend to defend Donald's pro-Putin stance with complete and utter shamelessness. He mocked Zelensky for daring to push back. Let's be clear. This is not just about Ukraine. This is about Donald's entire foreign policy shift toward Putin, which has been going on for almost a decade now. His administration is cutting cyber operations against Russia, as we mentioned. He's siding with Moscow at the UN, as we know, and he's laying the groundwork, again, for a direct meeting with Putin. And I'm repeating that because it is absolutely unheard of in this country's modern history for an American so-called leader to kowtow so shamelessly and pathetically to our enemy. They're not even hiding it anymore. So yes, it's dangerous, but the reason it's even more dangerous than it would otherwise be is because it is deliberate. Please take a second and like and share this video. It'd be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, please follow us and give the show a 5-star rating because it really does help other people find our content. Thanks.